Welcome. It's super excited to be here today with you all. We have quite a treat for you all. Mr. Raps co-hosting with us today. You may know him best from Adventures in DeFi Kingdoms, not just a website, but also a YouTube channel. If you've not checked them out, feel free to check them out. And Raf, I should let you know, and I should let the audience know, we did an episode together. And because as you saw before, before we launched today, I'm such a tech savvy individual. I accidentally made your show sort of invisible. I'm not sure. I delisted your show, your episode, so people may have not seen that. So if you've not seen it, feel free to watch it. It was a fun time. You got to know Raph a little bit more. And Mr. Jakxicles himself, the man, the myth, the legend, DFK Lord. He's here with us today to sort of, I think, do justice to something many of us don't chat about. I think you'll hear others talk about gameplay and PvP and PvE and what have you. But many of us, including myself, don't talk about lore enough. So with that said, let's go ahead and just introduce ourselves. Raf, feel free to reintroduce yourself to everyone, and then we'll have Jakxicles do the same.
Yeah, sure. Raf from Adventures in DeFi Kingdoms. Big thanks to the DeFi Kingdoms team. We got listed here recently this last week during the patch notes. So thank you to everyone who was involved with that, especially Sunbear. I mean, he dealt with a lot of needless questions that I'm sure we had. So yeah, really excited to be just a part of this community. I love being a content creator. Really excited to talk with you, Jax.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Absolutely huge kudos to the DFK team. And congrats. We see some of our fan favorites here on the chat. Feel free to type in those questions. We have some of our own we'll end up bombarding Jakxicles with here shortly. And with that said, just as a reminder, because I see him here in the chat box, I will be doing a show right after this with Mr. Crypto Gritty himself. I'm back to back this tonight. So with that said, let's try and squeeze as much content. Mr. Jakxicles, how are you? Who are you? Tell us about yourself.
Hey, I'm pretty good tonight. I was just telling Raph that I had just got done watching Rings of Power before I jumped into the show, the newest episode. But we're not here to talk about Rings of Power. It's a great show. I think there's some things that they're a little bit. It's not too much of a problem, but it's overall it's a pretty great show. I won't lie. It's beautiful.
Well, I never made it through the Silmarillion, so you could fool me. So
I never read them either.
I tried twice.
Yeah, I've gone off info from people that have read it.
It's such a great actual topic to even bring up as part of today's show. I mean, here controversy left and right, but when I've talked to and I've read through some of these die-hard fans, it's like when it gets to the nitty-gritty, at least what I've read and what I've heard, they talk about the lore. It's not true to the lore. It's not true to the story. It says this. It says that. I mean, it's super important. So how did you get into just writing in general? I mean, where'd your passion come from?
So I got into writing during high school. In ninth grade, it's funny because writing was something I wasn't interested in during before high school. I absolutely didn't like it. Reading, I just was like, eh. Didn't pay too much mind to it. Had no interest. But oddly enough, I loved telling stories.
Mm.
Um, I had a very imaginative mind growing up as a child, maybe too imaginative. Um, there's a quote that kind of struck a string inside me where I don't know exactly where it's from. Maybe someone will know it where it's from, but it goes something along the lines of dreamers reach for the sun, but realists keep those dream. Oh no, dreamers help realists get off the ground, but realists help dreamers from flying too close to the sun. I was flying way too close to the sun, way too close. And I think my father, who is more of a realist, when he came back from the military during when I was in high school, he helped like ground that reality into me. Um, but other than that, I got into writing during ninth grade. There was a teacher I had wrote some short stories that was part of a project. He really loved those short stories and said, "Hey, I want to recommend you to English honors next year." So I did that, and I absolutely killed it. Went into advanced English, and that teacher was pretty rough. At the time, I was like immature. I think we were all immature during high school for the most part. We were still learning our emotions and figuring out who we are.
I don't know if I think some people are in my inner circle would argue that I have not matured yet, so I'm still waiting.
Big
Well,
thing
don't
here.
don't grow up too fast. Like it's a trap. You gotta always keep that inner kid alive somewhere. Um, but the teacher was hard, and when I reflect on that now, I realize that she had the best interest in her heart for us, and she really shaped my writing skills. Helping identify themes and plot points. There was a project that we had for 3 months, and it was on the play called The Crucible. I don't know if you ever
Mm-hmm.
watched it or read it. Yeah, I absolutely fell in love with that story. That was pretty intense. Um, but since then, writing kind of fell off for a little bit more because I so 9 years ago I used to be homeless, and then kind of worked my way up throughout those 9 years working at different jobs, and jobs that weren't even related to writing. Is all physical labor like construction, low voltage wiring. Then I started working on cars and stuff, but writing was always there. So a great outlet to get my writing out. Well, not necessarily out, but to practice my own writing was write short stories and do D&D campaigns. Hosted a lot of D&D campaigns.
I've never
and
played. I've always wanted to.
No
it's a
way! Get out of here, Ref.
it's a lot of fun. You're missing
Yeah.
out.
No,
Yeah.
I believe it. I've been drawn to a lot of other tabletop games. I guess it's not really I don't know, quasi tabletop game. I don't know. You can feel free to correct me, but yeah, never got into it. But would love to sometime. So ever
Oh,
meet up in person, let's do it.
there's gotta, yeah, no, let's absolutely do it. But there's gotta be, well, first and foremost, what a story for you to come up. I mean, just triumph through adversity to sort of get where you are. Not only that, but turn sort of what many people would consider a hobby, right, into a career of sorts here. I wish I could turn napping into a career, and I can't do that. It's my hobby. um I get less and less sleep as the little one sort of gets older, but it's one of those things. And I was talking to Sam and some of the other creators too. I mean, to be able to turn a passion, again, something many people would consider a hobby, into a career or a de facto career. I mean, that's really awesome. Um, how did you did now? And I've heard from other people who are creative writers. Is it something that you would sort of use it as a venue to sort of get those emotions, get those feelings, and sort of inspire your writing as you went on? Sort of an escape of sorts.
Like, all right, so correct me if I'm wrong. What you're trying to say is, am I creating stories using like challenges I've
Yeah,
overcome?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. So there is a book, or it's actually three books. It's a trilogy so far from how I'm planning. There's two trilogies. They're all in the same universe, but they're all those D&D campaigns. And originally, I was just writing them out throughout the end of high school, my senior year, and there was like something missing. And one of my weakest points as a writer is character development. I'm great at world building. I can build in-depth lore, tell you about the city, its government, what the people are like, and like the little stories that happen in the alleyways in there. But when it comes to characters, it's hard to understand human emotion, and um, that's where I started playing D&D campaigns, or putting my stories into D&D campaigns, because I would let the players decide like what kind of characters they're going to be, and then I'd watch them and their actions and how they interacted with each other and study them and take notes and use that into the stories. But as far as like like as what you were mentioning earlier about challenges, using that as an outlet into my right, yes, there is one in that story. Sorry, I was kind of talking
no,
your
no,
head
no,
off
no, no,
there
no,
for a bit.
no, no, no.
Uh, um, my dad, like as I mentioned earlier, he was in the military. He was gone most of my life after 9/11. So I kind of grew up without a dad, and that tore my family apart a little bit. Fast forward to today, everything's fine. He retired back in 2013, and it was kind of weird, uh, like forming that relationship back with my father, because essentially it's almost as if I didn't know him.
Yeah.
And I saw the pain that that did to my family and myself. And war is the effects of war is something I'm trying to convey in that story as well. There is a faction in that show that is the main antagonist, or one of the main antagonists, and um, I want to portray the effects of war and what it does to families throughout that series. I know it's been done plenty of times, but honestly, I don't think it gets old. So it's always a nice lesson to learn.
Yeah, no, I forgot where I heard it, and I'm gonna butcher exactly how it was worded to me or how I saw it, but it was something to the effect of there's only, and maybe you're familiar with the concept, there's only X amount of stories ever told. And like every story sort of falls back to these original sort of like 22 thematic stories.
Yeah.
They kind of all end the same. They're all told differently. I think there's this comedian who's done sort of a bit on, and maybe you all have seen it, where he's talking about how Star Wars and Harry Potter are essentially the same story, but instead of lightsabers, it's wands, but thematically, it's the same story. And it's kind of true, right? But like you're saying, it's one of those things where yes, it's been done, but it's your spin and it hits home. And I'll tell you, and I'm sure for you too, Raf. I mean, for me as a new dad, these trying to sort of build that relationship with my daughter and sort of grow up and grow close together before she's like, Dad, you're embarrassing me, go away. Just trying to solidify those
Yeah.
relationships, so important.
I I think I know that Star Wars, the what George Lucas had used was the hero's journey. Um, was that used as well for Harry Potter?
I
Was that
I
some?
I
I'm pretty.
don't know, but I mean, if you look at sort of thematically, it's the same sort of script, right?
Yeah.
Um, ish. We're, you think about it, you've got the uncle, you've got the friends, and and your friends fall in love, and you're trying to there's a plot. I guess every story's got a plot twist. I should have read up on it a bit more to sort of regale Jakxicles lore storyteller with specifics. but nonetheless, right? It's one of those things where I imagine you've also taken from those stories you've written, you sort of incorporated that information or some of those themes into maybe DFK, maybe sort of a stretch there. Is that true?
No, you're right, and that's to touch on the notion that everything is like somewhat connected to each other. It is hard to create unique ideas for stories because nowadays it's everything is stemmed off from something else, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's all about how you execute it. And with DeFi Kingdoms, the story that I'm generating here, like one thing I was making and I realized, and someone else pointed out, I think it was Bolon, where the Drithinian Empire and their dragon, the Naxxis family and the Dragon Riders. It's very reminiscent of Game of Thrones and the Targaryen family. And I recognized that early on. I'm like, okay, yeah, but what can I do to make it unique in its own like format? What can I Dragon Riders and families, like that's pretty cool. Like that's pretty cool.
Cool.
and I mean, and Dragon Riders aren't necessarily a unique idea that is reserved to Game of Thrones. Maybe when it comes to families, but in D&D, I mean, the Githyanki race were known to ride red dragons in the astral plane against the Mind Flayers.
And Raph, no, I was gonna say, and Raph, I know you sort of live in this world where you like certain games, certain things that may be different than I think all of us, right? Any similarities in like sort of the makeup, the buildup of some of the lore, what you may know, or the game itself, in terms of like, you know what, this reminds me of this game or this plot line, or you were talking about oh geez, what's this show?
Rings of Power.
Oh boy, the dragons. We were just talking
about.
Game of
Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Yeah. but Raph, any sort of synergies that sort of resonate with you? That's like, you know what, this reminds me of this.
I would say I think you've done a really good job keeping this unique in a lot of different ways, and I guess it's a lot of concepts are so similar. It's hard to draw on just one or credit just one. Like when I think about some of the lore that has influenced kind of my creative mindset, I mean, it goes all over the place, from Final Fantasy games to Legend of Zelda to to Game of Thrones, to the Tolkien books, to all, there's so many things out there that have influence. So I don't know, I feel like you've done an excellent job kind of carving out a niche, and it has some mythology to it. I guess if there's one thing that I had to point to, it's I like having the concept of gods, and that's something that you recently released on Twitter. I'm really drawn to Greek mythology. I've always been kind of fascinated by that. I also philosophy as well. One of my favorite short essays in philosophy was The Myth of Sisyphus. If you haven't ever read that, it's by Camus. Excellent. And so I guess that's what I guess, like, I like the mythology of like deities or beings that are impacting your heroes or your world in a way that some are good, some are bad, some are trying to help you, some are agnostic. I'm really drawn to that concept, so I'm excited that it's there.
So Raph, you know what? Then you'd be interested in D&D.
Yeah, there's a plethora of lore going on in D&D. Like, just to touch on D&D, like how demons and devils are portrayed very differently in D&D than we have in religions around the world, in our own world. Like devils are kind of the unsung heroes in a way. because they're fighting the endless war, the blood war of demons that try to invade the land. And the gods that are the good ones, they kind of just like kick back in the heavens. They're like, oh man, this is cool. And the devils are like, bro, we are holding back the demons. Like, what are y'all doing? We're doing all the work down here.
So I have to ask you, I can't let this opportunity sort of pass me by. How did you even get involved? I mean, it sounds like, I mean, you don't just wake up one day and say, okay, let me submit my resume over to whomever. I mean, where's the connection? How did you get into the project?
So I have to be careful with that because it's it's nothing necessarily bad. It's for the identity of my dear friend. They had we're both writers, and we have great imagination. I get inspired by their work and what they do, and that's what pushes me even more, seeing them release content on. And he was part, or they yeah he was part of the project, and uh extended me an offer, and I was kind of like iffy at first because I was comfortable at my other job, and um, I was like, let me try this like part time and stuff. Let me just dip my toes in there and see what it's about. And after a while, I was like, oh yes, okay, okay. Like my last job was good, but it wasn't helping me grow. And after being exposed to DFK for a while, I took that leap of faith and left there and started going full time with this. And so far, it's been an incredible journey. It's funny because when I got brought onto the team, I was like, okay, what do we have like lore established? And they're like, well, we have the lore doc and it's like 4 paragraphs. I was like, what? It's like, huh? Wait a second. Okay. I mean, that's cool. I mean, it's a new project. It's been around since August of 2021. I was like, sure, let me read it. And I'm sure you've all read it, the lore doc on DFK's site. But the when it got to the part where it was like human civilization was peaceful, and then the age of progression, and then the world just got sundered by IRA. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Like,
What happened?
bro, what happened? Yeah, like that escalated real fast. Like, because the age of progression sounded like, just industrial revolution in that world. And I'm like, okay, like I know gods and Greek mythology and even like in the Bible, they can be pretty arrogant with the human progression. And Greek mythology, I believe it was Atlantis, and in the Bible, it was the Tower of Babel.
Right.
And the god or gods in each of those mythologies was like, "Yo, man, like, how dare y'all do your thing on your own?
Shut
Like,
it down.
bam, yep, shut it down." So I had to create this whole story from that, and which is cool because it's like a blank slate. Now Sarandale did have a lot of lore. It wasn't in order. It was kind of like all over the place. Cinnamon Bun originally was doing a lot of the lore in Sarandale, and when I looked at it, it was all really good, but it wasn't pointing to any. It wasn't going in a direction. It was just a bunch of puzzle pieces. How I see it, I was like, okay.
So how do you map this out? Do you have like a chronology in your mind, or have you like written that down? Like, here's the first age, the second age. Like, how do you like keep that organized? That it sounds like a beast to grapple.
It is, and sometimes I don't give myself like well, for the longest time I never gave myself credit for this because all of my friends in real life and stuff have said this to me in D&D, and those worlds I built, they're like, have you written this down? I'm like, no. And they're like, what? Like, how do you keep this information? I'm like, I don't know, I just do it. But I've had to force myself to write it down lately, especially at DFK, because I have to make sure the rest of the team knows what I'm doing and what envision I'm writing here and stuff, which is helping me form that habit that needed to be formed anyway. That was neglected for most of my life. But yes, I do keep it all on documents now on our sites that we use, and sometimes Google Docs if I'm like in a hurry. If I'm out somewhere, pull my phone out, go on Google Docs and write some stuff, come back home, and then get back on the computer and put it
Mhm.
on our work sites. Yeah, it's a lot. I even like in worlds such as Metroid or even my favorite show, The Expanse. I
Ooh, I
absorb.
love The Expanse.
Expanse is so good.
So good.
So I'm not familiar with it. So give me a quick synopsis. What's that show about?
The Expanse takes so okay. I'm gonna talk your head off. So let me because I get so excited about the show. The Expanse takes place 200 years in the future in our universe. The humans have explored the solar system, and there are three factions: Earthers, Martians, and the Belters. There is this unique conflict in between all three of them, and it adapts it really well to where that could be possible one day. Those same conflicts, the issues that they deal with. The one thing I really love about the show is that they try to stay true to physics as close as possible. So their ships, like in Star Wars and Star Trek, physics goes out the window. They don't pretend to be staying true to physics. They're like, yeah, we know gravity doesn't work like this. We don't care. And that's fine. It works. As long as you acknowledge like those rules in your story, it works. But ships like Star Destroyers are built like this, and everybody stands up, accordingly, and they walk back and
Right.
forth. In the Expanse, the ships are built like this, and the floors are positioned, and everyone stands up like that. So
Mm.
when the thruster goes off, it creates artificial gravity by constant acceleration.
I've had super. Okay, so all right, I'm gonna put that show on my
Yeah,
list
yeah.
to
It's
watch.
on It's
It's
on
good.
Amazon. There's 6 seasons. I'm really sad because Amazon canceled after season
Oh,
6,
oh
and
Lord.
it gets
No.
see. And the cool thing about it is that the writers of all 9 books um, are in charge of the show's production as well. So the show is phenomenal as far as writing, and it's one of my. I probably watched the whole show probably like 8 times by now, and I'm probably gonna do it again soon because character development in that show is immensely like powerful. It's good, and that's one of my sources of inspiration I go to when I'm having hard times
No way.
trying to develop characters. I'll watch that show, or I'll even read the books again, and it goes like deeper
That's
into their mind.
Well, that's super cool. And so I know want to maximize the questions that came in. Let's go to some of those, Raph. We'll go back and
Yeah.
forth here.
Mhm.
And again, for everyone listening, so questions. I did put it out on Twitter. I did reach out to some of our um, tried and true faithful DFKers. Some of the names you may recognize: Stronghold, Metas, Malians. The bunch, right? And many more really. It's one of the questions that came up, and sort of one I've had is now that we're pivoting Serendale 1.0 to this new Clayton chain. How, if any, has the lore changed, and how have you had to pivot, if any?
So I've had the discussion with Beetle a couple times in the past, and some of the team members. Nothing is really. I was worried about that too when I heard about it because I mean it was going to happen, and I've asked about it. Um, Not much. I don't even think really anything at all. It's not going to be impacted. The only thing that's going to be different is just Harmony is now Clayton. So that's literally it. I know they announced the new power token, which I don't know
Whoa, this is news to me. Have they really?
well, they announced it in it was an AMA a while
Oh,
ago.
okay,
There's
okay.
the Clayton power.
Oh, not the name, not the name.
Yeah, not I don't know the
Got
name. I don't know the name
gotcha.
still, but the I'm trying. I've starting to get an idea of how to like introduce that into the lore of the world. And I thought it was going to be difficult. No, it was like super easy. I can't share that obviously because it'd be spoilers, but I've already figured it out and wrote it down, and yeah, I think it's going to be great. As far as all the other lore I've prepared, no, like nothing's going to change as far as I'm concerned.
I'd love to know more about the Eternal Pages. It feels like the first intersection for quests and lore, kind of coming together.
Mhm.
Do you agree? Is that an accurate assumption? And then like, how do you see like building is there like extended lore off of the Eternal Quest pages, or like is that just like an element of lore, and there will continue to be new elements of lore that will eventually may weave together?
So sorry, say that one more time. I think I understood it, but
I'm just curious to see like how you're planning on integrating like the Eternal Pages. That it felt like for me like the first time that they're becoming like I see or foresee the opportunity for there to be a quest based on lore.
gotcha.
And I'm wondering, like how does this evolve? And will this be like a singular quest, or will this continue to like be a more of like a storyline or a story
So
chain?
you're wondering how I'm going to introduce lore into the game besides like the internal stories. Is
Right,
that
right.
what okay.
Yeah.
So with the eternal story pages, that that's more on like historical lore. Now some of that historical lore still has relevance into the current world and the main story that will unfold whenever that progresses. But um the way how lore, so there are I just had this side contest that wrapped up earlier this week, and it was for the tomes. So tomes are another entry point of finding lore in the game.
Mhm.
So if you ever played Skyrim or Metroid or Oblivion or any games that where you can pick up items and they contain text of lore inside of it, that's a similar way of how we're gonna introduce lore. The tomes, I have a lot of the tomes done, but unfortunately, because priorities are shifted elsewhere for the time being, especially with the deal with Clayton, it isn't being focused on too much being implemented. Um, but the tomes are like scrolls or pieces of paper or even books that you can find that have multiple paragraphs and that tell us a unique story in each one that goes on in the world. Um, like one of them is called Amira's journal, and there are 3 parts to them. And in her journal, it talks about what life was like during the Drithinian Empire a little bit before its downfall and the Sundering.
So that's pretty cool. If Three Wolves is listening, there are multiple tomes. So be ready and and start collecting all those pages because
Yeah,
I hear hundreds.
yeah, the difference between the tomes and the Eternal Pages story is Eternal Pages are NFT items, whereas tomes they will just be in-game items
Okay.
that they are just strictly lore based. They're not for like tokens or price value. They were just in-game items.
So there's a question in here. So what about new classes? I know you mentioned not much was changing with the integration of Clayton, but you're gonna get new classes not just from Clayton, but you're gonna get them from any other expansions. I know there's rumors, and we've all sort of been speculating as to which new expansions, right? How are those heroes integrated into your lore, and does that throw sort of a monkey wrench in everything you're planning?
Yeah, so I thought about that too, and I don't have a complete like solid answer to be completely honest because I don't know what those classes are going to be yet. It's still early. I do have an idea. The world map that I posted of Serendale, that drawing I did on my spare time just for fun, it shows Serendale, and then it shows 2 other continents next to it, the Galron Wastes and Eberath. I could I was thinking of maybe those heroes originate from one of those regions, possibly, or somewhere else in Sarandel. Um, to that one, I don't really know. Um, like I said, I don't have too much information on it on my part because we don't. I mean, I don't know if there's been discussions about it, but as far as to my knowledge, I don't know what those new classes are going to be. I don't think it would throw too much of a wrench. It was the same thing with Seers and Berserkers. We all had those other classes, and then Seers and Berserkers came in. Uh, it was a little bit of a challenge to try to wrap in how they were connected, because one would argue, well, if the portal opened to the Inner Grove and had all these heroes coming out the original classes on Harmony, where were the Seers and Berserkers during the entire time? Couldn't they just come through that portal too? Oh yeah, I thought about this. And all what the Seers and Berserkers, it all has to go back to the goddess Skali that is in Crystal Vale, that is mentioned through lore. And I can't give too much information on that one because that would be super spoilery, and I don't want to ruin. I don't. There is a storyline in Crystal Vale that that I've been working on that is, yeah, I just don't want to ruin the fun for y'all. Like,
it's exciting to look forward to.
Yeah.
So tell us more. There's a question here, or more of a restatement of some of the lore, and I'd like to dive into, heroes coming from the portals and get more of your thoughts on that. So I'll read here a segment from the lore. Once these first heroes were whisked away into the Inner Grove, Ire, the old god of renewal, could suppress his anger no longer in the face of such disrespect for Gaia. In his wrath for the children, what they have done for to his love, he sundered the continent, separating them by vast oceans, and put a halt to their progress. So this kind of goes back to a little bit of the the Babylon moment, the Atlantis moment. But tell us more about like heroes. They're away in the portal. Is this like another realm that they have been banished to? Is this another physical location on the continent that now we're allowing them to pass into this one?
So when I still had some of my team on board still at the time, like Bone Pillar, Jericho, and Sinstar, we all talked about that. Well, I brought ideas forth to them and we brainstormed. So this is mostly Sinstar's idea, but he imagined that the Inner Grove was a pocket dimension within the planet itself. Like you can dig into the planet all the way to the other side. You can get to its molten core, hopefully not being crushed to death or dying from immense heat, but you won't find anything there. But within that same space, but kind of like in a different dimension, there is the Inner Grove. The Inner Grove is a pocket dimension that exists within the world itself. That is a lush jungle with towering mountains surrounding on all sides, going around it. In fact, in the internal pages story, mentioning the elemental lords, the elemental lords stand by as its guardians, posted at the four corners of the entire dimension.
So here's a question.
And why can I? I'm sorry, I gotta go.
No.
Can I ask why are they guarding that? Are they trying to keep the heroes contained?
So yeah. Well, the heroes, the Inner Grove isn't so much of a prison. It's a home. It's where the druids originated, and it's reserved to those with a pure heart that are allowed to enter into that area. The reason why the elemental lords are there as well is to protect it from outside forces that may want to harm the Inner Grove. A good example was the Titan Wars inside the Eternal Pages story. The Titans rebelled against the Volmarins, sided with the Abaddonist Pantheon, and started this whole war that lasted for 10,000 years. That in the early parts of that war, they tried to storm the inner grove and were suppressed by those elemental lords.
That's you know
Got my mind spinning now.
I know, right? I'm super high, yeah, and I'm just hyped. A question for you. And this one's an interesting one. So, and this is and this comes from one of our audience members here that was sort of asked and pulled. Will we ever be able to restore all the land masses and bring restoration to the singular continent and be a singular people again? Is that something likely in the future?
Lore wise, I like to think, yeah, maybe it may take hundreds, maybe a couple more thousands of years. Dian, the god of craftsmanship and wisdom, took it upon himself after, well after the Sundering and well into the Dark Age. He decided to let's start like weaving the continents back together. He got them close enough to where they can sail safely for the most part, and then just it's like winding a clock and letting it do its own thing. And he doesn't want to rush, or I like to think he doesn't want to rush all the continents back together and then have these different societies clash against one another again. This gives time for the druids to kind of go around the world, find these new societies, and kind of like extend their hand and make sure everyone works cooperatively so that they don't repeat the same mistakes that their ancestors did.
All right, so I got to go a little off script and ask a question here that I have lore related. So there's a creepy crawler in the Zarendale Castle that you can kind of see lurking in the background.
Yes.
And we have some, nefarious bad actors hanging out in the Crystal Vale Castle right now. So to me, what I'm drawing here is that maybe Serendale is a little more corrupted, or there's some bad stuff that's been going on for a while, and they're trying to get this going over in Crystal Vale. Can you expand on this any?
So the creepy crawly, I have to look at the castle in Serendale again. Are you talking about there's a dragon tail, or I think it's a dragon tail. That kind of like hangs out in the castle, and then
I didn't know what it was.
I mean, I don't really know what it is either. I mean, it could be a dragon, could be some kind of serpent, or it could be like a giant lizard. That's his tail. So are you talking about like the glowing red eyes that are just
the tail and the eyes over there in the castle in Serendale? And I didn't know if that's what the cultist Egon and his buds were working on, trying to bring forth in Crystal Vale. So
funny enough, I had stepped away for a little bit to take care of some matters, and it was like really like a week or so. But I didn't even know about the cultists, to be completely honest. They were added in, and I was like, this is interesting. I was like, what is he doing over there at the wall? And some of the memes that came forth was not good.
No.
But it jogged a memory I had that was used something I was developing for the main story quest with cults. And I like to imagine that this cult of the serpent that are hanging out in the Crystal Castle, they are a couple of odd fellows that are from Serendale that have never seen a storm serpent in their entire life. Like they've heard stories about it, tales of myth, like in the Eternal Pages story. And when they got to Crystal Vale, they see Zenra and they go absolutely bonkers and start worshiping him. Because Vithraven is a town that has been on its own since the Sundering. It has survived the Sundering, and Zenra has been their watchful guardian. And when you have people coming in from different parts of the world that have never seen a storm serpent and are not used to that, yeah, it can start some weird things, some like a cult.
Mhm.
Someone's pointing out the fact that they've now have to go and check because I've not noticed as of yet, but they've noticed Egon is gone, or at least away from where he was, and he's revealed some interesting things. So if you've not seen it like I have, feel free to jump in and check that out. I have to ask you, it's sort of a this is a Sergeant Filthy McNasty question. I was very intrigued. So when I first discovered DFK, I was like, you know what, is this for me? It looks interesting. I like it. I found out the name of the town was Adeline, and it just so happens wife named Docs. That's my wife's name, and I was like, what are the odds? Like
Nah.
that's not a very sort of traditional name. Where did the name come from? Is that something you were involved with, or what sort of
No,
the lore?
no. So again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how Cinnamon Bun wrote a lot of the lore originally for Sarandale before I came in. Adeline, there was a couple of city names that he had named. There was Adeline, Corinthia, Meloria, and Edelwood. And in that region, like that is what he did. The rest of the continent was with the other sections, Galron Waste, Eberron, the City of Salt, etc. That was all mine afterwards.
And I was intrigued, Raph. So I know you just bought land. Where in the map did you buy? Because I was like, you know what, it'd be so cool to purchase land in Adeline.
Yeah,
And then
just
I saw those prices, and I was like, you know what, it's cool.
yeah, just north of the castle, right before the bridge.
Nice.
Nice. Right in the city.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited about how land will eventually tie to lore and a tie to guilds. Can you give us any insight on how, lore will affect guilds in the future, or what are their purpose?
Again, it kind of goes back to, I'll have to give a similar answer to that one like I did with Clayton Heroes. I honestly don't know. It's still early. I haven't heard much about guilds, to be completely honest. I haven't really thought too much on it either because it's early. I need more details to work with that before I start crafting anything around.
So let me ask around that question a little bit then more. How much of your time would you say you spend on like past versus present versus future when it comes to lore?
Oh, like the end game lore, like historical lore.
Yeah, right. Or like,
Okay.
here's what's happening today in Crystal Vale.
Yeah, so most of it is historical lore, and part of that goes back to what I do with D&D, and the worlds that I do, and those stories that I'm writing outside of DFK, my own personal works. I like to build the world and its history and what happened, so that I can build off ideas of what comes after what happened. And I've pretty much got the general layout of historical lore done. The conflicts that happened, the beings that inhabited at that time, the kingdoms, and so forth, to where now I can start thinking, well, what happens after that?
Yeah.
And sorry, and most of that ties into the main story quest, the overall story that will take place in the game, the present day.
So I have to ask you, I think many of us are curious. PJ happened, and we imagine, we envision, we were told about some, maybe PvE, some storyline there. I mean, how does the PJ storyline fit into the lore at large? I know, there were some, Krakens, right? And then, there's a big Kraken in there. But how does it all sort of tie in? How did you tie that in together? And as far as any sort of storylines, I mean, how are you weaving in PJ into that?
It's been a little while since we've touched on the PJ quest. When Jericho was still on the team, he was helping me with a Perilous Journey quest. I was working on main story quest when that was the focus at the time, and I handed off PJ quests to him to handle since I was all my time was on main story quest. It'll probably be different, so I don't mind sharing this. But his idea of Perilous Journey quest was that there was going to be some PvE elements regarding the Kraken, possibly, kind of like finishing the job.
Oh, love it! Can't wait to go finish that bad boy off.
We had a Kraken come in and take a lot of lives.
He did us dirty.
He did you dirty, horribly. I mean, he's got to answer, right? I mean,
right.
The heroes are there now in Crystal Vale. Zenra has more firepower to help guard Vithraven. So, yeah, I mean, if he wants to take on the Kraken alongside you, I mean, I don't see why not. Interesting. I had written down that I'd never released the Kraken's name. I've had it. And I don't know where I wrote it, but
no.
his name is Razgoth, like I think it's Razgoth Razaz or something like that. It's an old like a long name, but I call him Raz for Raz for short, Raz.
Raz the Kraken.
Yes, so Raz and Zenra, they go way back. During the Titan Wars, the Abaddonus or Abaddonus Pantheon, however you want to pronounce it, they, together with their magic and the Titans' magic, they created the Krakens. And the Krakens rivaled the Storm Serpents in this war for a long time. There's not many Krakens left. I like to think that after the Titan Wars and after the Sundering, thousands upon thousands of years, there's probably maybe 2, maybe 8, or maybe, I mean, somewhere in between that number of Krakens left in the world. But one of them is Raz, and Raz is a formidable foe that Zenra knows all too well. They've fought in the past several times.
How many serpents are left?
Most of the I like to think that there's probably a couple dozen. There's way more than Krakens. There's probably a couple dozen serpents left. Most of them are back in Volmera, though, in that realm. The only storm serpent, as far as I'm aware of, that's left is Zenra, that stayed behind voluntarily to guard Vithraven.
So I have to ask you just a quick follow-up, because this is a Kraken-related question. So I listened to one of at one point in time, you referenced the fact that, yes, there's Krakens, but there's bigger fish out there, right? Any clues as to what those bigger fish are?
Could be land turtles. Land turtles are definitely bigger than Krakens. Land turtles cannot be harmed by Krakens as well. They are much more sturdier. They are older than Krakens too.
Are they benevolent?
Yeah, they are. The land turtles are responsible for most of the fauna on the world, from the Elder Spriggan. In the Eternal Pages story, and you recall the Elder Spriggan when it dropped its acorns and birthed the land turtles and the titans from their shells. She also had lesser Spriggans that went and created the flora across the worldland forest, whereas the land turtles created most of the fauna.
Do you see quests leading to the land turtles? Like, I imagine land turtles being large in stature. is it like the size of, you could have a small village on a land turtle, you could have
Oh,
just a few people riding it, like what's the size?
I like to think they are in my imagining. I like to think that they are bigger than the lion turtles in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Um, Probably. Well, let me take a step back, because there's different land turtles in Avatar: The Last Airbender universe. You have the one Aang encountered, and then you have the one that Avatar One encountered, or the old humans encountered in the and had their villages on in Legend of Korra.
Mhm.
Those land turtles, I mean, those lion turtles were significantly bigger than what Aang was riding on.
Mhm.
I would say that size, because they could fit entire villages on them.
Love it.
And that's funny. It was a question that was asked, and I forgot to include it. I think in this slew of questions I put out there for you, Raph. But someone was asking, "Can you write turtles?" And I was
Oh,
like,
I saw that
"Oh,
one.
you
That's
decide? Okay, you
I
said
have to give credit where credit's due. I did not come up with that
okay."
myself.
Beautiful. We have a couple minutes here. I know, Crypto Grady, you'd love for me to keep going, and I'd love it too. But I want to squeeze your show in as well. And for everyone listening, we do have a lot more questions that we may not get to. We won't get to. I've promised to send those over to Jakxicles, and he'll go ahead and sort of maybe answer those. I don't know. Do you have an idea as to, maybe before I start committing you to something, how you maybe want to go about those questions? Jackson, as to how you maybe want to answer
Oh,
those questions
sorry.
after the fact.
Okay, sorry, you were kind of cutting out there.
Oh, no worries.
And there is a cockroach on my wall that
Oh,
caught my
well, that's not
attention.
fun.
That's the
Just
first. That's the first one I've had in this house in 4 years. So
Mm.
so lore. You write it into
yeah.
the lore.
Wait, yeah.
Any final question for you, Raph?
I gotta ask the question by Sir Worm that I saw. Spiders. What's going on with these bad boys? Is there a spider issue in Serendale? Is that an active storyline?
Yeah, so it's got a little. I haven't gotten to it with. It's gonna have its own storyline. Probably a few in there, but it does play a role in the main story quest as well. Um, Amoria's domain is a spider infested area. Um, in fact, all of this is mostly Cinnamon Bun's work, so give him some kudos to that. Amoriath is a rumored to be a massive queen spider that hides within the cavern system of Amoria's domain, and her spiders go out and capture prey and bring them back to the lair for her. Um,
Oh, Shelob.
mhm. Oh yeah, she's. I like to imagine she's pretty ruthless. She's nasty.
Okay.
So I'll end my questions with a very yeah, I would ask you to guess who this question's from, but it's from Stronghold. He's wanting to know about pets specifically. How are those going to be written into the lore? How have they been written into the lore? And sort of pet utility as far as lore perspective. How is that all coming together?
So there's a lot of lore entries on the back of those cards that you can read. I feel like pets are more of a world building, another outlet for world building, like the blubs. The blubs are their lore entry. Correct me if I'm wrong. They were responsible for ecosystems being devastated because of their invasive tactics. I think my favorite one I wrote was Basilisk. Basilisk, they can chew through pretty much almost anything, and they are sought out by warlords to use as companions and guardians.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, no. Well, again, thank you very much, Jacksicles, for your time. Thank you, Raph, for joining me today, doing some co-hosting. There's so much more to cover, and I think we all want to hear more lore. I was doing a podcast a couple episodes ago, and you were talking about how the show is really sort of the game's a gamified decks, right? What makes it a game? Yes, PvP, yes, PvE will help, but lore is gonna sort of drive that to the next level. Because you can imitate, but you can't replicate what you're doing here at Jacksonville. So thank you very much.
Mhm.
Any final words for the community?
Um, yes, but I also meant to say this a little while ago. I know there was a question you had sent me about the Druids
Yes.
connection.
Yes.
Would you love me to answer
Oh
that one?
yes. Oh yes, please. Yes.
Oh
All
yeah.
right. So the question is, do Druids have a backstory as a group to some connection with Irie ancestrally as they work with runes, like the dragon speakers of the Naxxis family do with the dragons? So the Druids don't have a connection to Irie necessarily. Druids spawned forth from Gaia after the Titan Wars. Before humanity came, before humanity came to be, there were Titans, and the Druids did not exist at that time. When the Titans were castrated or chastised for that. That's the word I was looking for. When they were chastised by the Volmrans as punishment for the rebellion, they became humans. Um, Gaia had created druids and the Inner Grove to go forth and guide humanity from repeating those same mistakes, and have pretty much them, worship her and live bountifully. But they do not have a connection to Irie. Um, I would say the runes have more of a connection to the heroes with Irie, um, given the fact that they use them for power.
Oh, geez, like I said, we could do 2-3 hours and it'd be great, and probably need another four.
Yeah.
But any final closing remarks there, Jack? For all of us as a community.
I just want to say that y'all are absolutely amazing, and I will admit that it is pretty nerve-wracking to be in this kind of environment, because it's one thing having 6 people at a D&D table say, "Hey, this is pretty cool," and then be a part of an entire community that is like kind of looking at your work. There is a little bit of pressure, a little bit of anxiety there, probably a lot of anxiety sometimes, but um it is remarkable. The community is amazing. The lore entries that they submitted for the side contest were absolutely amazing. It was a hard choice with some of them, but y'all are incredible, and I look forward to developing more of the lore. And hopefully, when we get to around to main story quests, you can see the story that I've been working on and dive deeper into it.
So excited.
Beautiful. Raph, any closing words from you?
Just closing words of thanks. Really appreciate everything you're doing, and I can imagine that sticking with a crypto project during this bear market can't be easy. So and also just a personal thank you to you, Jakxicles, for caring about this. We can see it in your work, so thank you.
I appreciate it. I can't let it go too easily either. So
Yeah, no, go for it. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I was saying, yeah, I was going to touch, like, yes, the crypto bear market it can be discouraging. But the crypto aspect wasn't the reason why I joined. I mean, I joined because it's the opportunity to write a story and to share it to the world.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I'm here. I mean, crypto, like, if the price goes up or down, like, great. If it goes down, okay. Well, either way, I still got a story to write. So,
yeah, no, and much appreciated. I look forward to hearing more and sort of seeing everything develop. More lore talk is great. We want to definitely hear more. I'll end with a consider a like, a subscribe, and as a show note reminder to everyone, I will be off next week entirely working. So please consider watching some of our fellow YouTubers. We work hard on putting great content for you all. Raph with DFK, we've got Crypto Grady, we've got Bogside Chat, a lot more there for you all. And I'll end that with this sort of comment here, Jack. I was in the gardens the other day, and there was maybe 20 some people, and there was someone in there with with a question about a lore question. He was asking something to the effect, has anyone noticed there it looks like 11 get is everywhere, and I just loved the fact that he probably didn't know you were in the chat, and I could you were like, yeah, that's very interesting. I wonder what that's about. Sort of blending in with everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? 11 get, it's a pretty unique combination of characters, I would say.
And yeah, no, so that was great. I love it. Again, I'll send you those questions, and feel free to respond to those. You're always welcome back. Rap, same to you. Again, till next time, enjoy. See you at Crypto Grady's chat.
Good night.
Hey guys.
Night.
Okay.